All right, welcome to our Monday Night Moshiach class. Let me make sure I got my audio set up here. No, we want to use this guy over here.
And now we're good. Okay. We have an awesome class this evening. Hopefully, the trolls will be to a minimum tonight. We've had a recent expansion of lots of interesting trolls hopping on. But, anyways, tonight's Sikha, this is Parsha Shoftim that we're in right now. And this is known as what we call one of the Pigazim. All of the Sikhas of Nun base that we're learning Monday nights are all about Mashiach and Geula. And they're all the Sikhas that the Rebbe emphasized that we should be learning to prepare for Mashiach and to live with Mashiach. But there are certain ones that are known as like the bombshells, the ones that are frequently cited and quoted. There's maybe a handful, 5 or 8, something like that. And this is definitely one of them. Shoftim is one of the very, very strong sikhas. And I don't want to talk too much, so let's just hop right in. Okay, Aleph. V'shayich l'chzim hatzivei parshasenu shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'kol she'arecha yishno hayedud shel navi hageulah. The relevance with the commandment of the our parsha. Just want to add, I'd like to dedicate tonight's class to my dear friend Avi Piamento, who has passed about a month ago, Abraham ben Huda, who is the first person I ever learned the Sikha with when I was in yeshiva about 20 years ago. And you can see, like, I don't know if you can see, but I've made like a couple, markings in some notes and the footnotes, whatever. So Avi's book on Parsha Shoftim is filled with so many I don't even know the notes and pages folded over and other books inserted, and he's gotten into the Sikha in tremendous detail. And he just came into my mind when I was thinking about it when I started learning it, because I remember the first time learning and how powerful it was for me. Okay, so it says the relevance with the commandment in our parsha of shoftim, v'shotrim, that judges and policemen place for yourself in all of your gates. So this is an advice that is given, if you will, from the prophet of the redemption. Prophet of redemption is referring to Yeshayahu. In the English vernacular, Isaiah, as they call him. And you shall return your judges like in aforetimes, and your advisors in the beginnings. This is the prayer that we say every single day in Shemona Esrei, that we request of God to return our judges and our advisors like in the beginning times. I already said that. Return your judges like in aforetimes and your advisors like in the beginning. Okay. As we have emphasized many times of recent, especially as it's connected to the announcement from the leader of our generation. The altar tshuva, the altar geula, immediate tshuva, immediate repentance will result in immediate redemption. And we see that all of these signs have already taken place. So it's and that all that was left was said was to polish up the buttons, meaning the final stages. And now that the only thing that is left is that we should all stand and be prepared. And this already has passed. And therefore, the only thing that is left is that we must accept upon ourselves, Penei, literally meaning face, and also the inward dimension of Mashiach, our Redeemer, immediately. Mamish means like the physical, in a real, tangible way. not just a thought. מובן שאנחנו יודעים כבר עתה בזמן של קיום היות ושיבה שריפתך ויוצאך. And from this we can understand we're already holding at the time when the prophet Yeshayahu states that we will have a return of our judges, as in aforetimes, and our advisors in the beginning. And we see that this is already taking place. So what the Rebbe is saying is that the prophecy of Yeshayahu in the book of Isaiah is filled with prophecies of Geula and redemption. And he says over there that these prophecies of what will take place when Mashiach comes, when the redemption comes, the Rebbe explains, have already started and are already taking place as we speak right now. In other words, the Geula, the redemption, is unfolding at this very moment in time. Okay, base. And for this, we can understand the precise language, and now we're going to kind of make a differentiation between the different languages that are used here, according to the precise language of what is mentioned. Aleph. In our parsha, it says, we're commanded, judges and policemen you shall place to you, for you. Masha'en came Lashon Yehuda Amar Rak Mishiva Shreftach. V'lo mizkar shotri. Ve'elech noisef halashon ve'inyan v'yotzach. So the Rebbe is pointing out the difference in the language that is used in our parsha. In our parsha, the first command it says judges and policemen you shall place at your gates. But the prophecy of Yeshayahu, the prophecy of the prophet Isaiah, it uses a different type of language. It says that judges and it says you shall, just like in aforetimes, you shall appoint judges and advisors, and it doesn't use the word policeman at all. So the prophet Yeshayahu drops the word policeman and adds advisors. Base. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the difference in your judges and your advisors versus your judges and your policemen? What does it mean when it says your judges like in aforetimes and your advisors like in the beginning? Again, this is the language that's used by the prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah. And Dalit, Diuk shoiftecha v'yotzecha melashon nokeach. So the exact language of your judges and your advisors, it says are spoken in nokeach, in the present tense, meaning not present to you, to be present to you. In other words, it says it has at the end of it yotzecha shoftecha. In other words, for you presently right now. And we don't see that language in the other variant. Okay, so now we're going to take apart, and it may seem like a minor difference, but it's a major difference in what we learn in our parsha and what is brought down by the prophet Yeshayahu of returning our judges and our policemen, returning our judges and our advisors versus what is stated in the parsha, which is you shall place judges and policemen at your gates. Okay, Gimel. So Rashi says that explains the difference between judges and policemen. Shoiftim, or judges, the yanin hapsukim es hadin. They are responsible for administering the law. V'shoitrim oridin es ha'am achar motziin shemekevan mukavtin b'makal v'retzayra. But a policeman is actually the enforcer. So the judge issues the law, and the policeman is empowered to enforce the law. How does he enforce the law? By force, if necessary, using a stick, using a belt, hitting, any type of means necessary to enforce the law of the judges. The Zoyta murder is to say, and therefore we see that the policemen are literally the enforcers of the law, that the judge gives forth and are empowered to use whatever means necessary to enforce that law. שהפריחוי אס אנשי העם להשמה להוראות השופטים. כיוון שכל אנשים קיימו מעצמם אס ההוראות. Okay. So according to this, we could understand that in the future, in the times of redemption, and as the Rebbe pointed out in the beginning of the Sikha, we're already in those times now, because this is already being applicable. The first words the Rebbe said now. We will only have the need for judges and will no longer need policemen because there'll be no more evil in the world. And the Yetzer Hara will be removed. And therefore, since the Yetzer Hara will be removed, no one will go against the will of God or his rabbis who are in charge, the leaders of the generation, because everyone will want to fulfill what God's requests are. And therefore, there will be no need for police to enforce these laws. And we will only need judges. And therefore, the judges, the law that they give forward is only going to be there to teach Torah and to educate the Yidden regarding what mitzvahs are incumbent upon them. So we won't need an enforcer anymore. This is also hinted in the name of the Parsha, which is Parsha's Shoftim, judges. It's known that the name of the Torah portion is connected to the content of the Torah portion. All the and therefore, there's a connection to the name of the Parsha and exactly what is going to be discussed in the Parsha. The Horakitzad Misai Mitaim Shem HaParsha Shoiftim Ima Mesr Shatecha HaKadochara Shoiftim Vishoitrim Titain Lechavachol Shorecha. So the opening pasuk of this week's Chumash basically says, Shoiftim Vishoitrim Titain Lechavachol Shorecha. You shall appoint the commandment to yourself, judges and policemen at your gates. So the opening pasuk of this week's parsha is the commandment that you shall place judges and policemen at your gates. But the name of the parsha is not judges and policemen; it's just judges. And the Midrash says that if you don't have the police, then what good is the judge? Because if there's no one to enforce, we see this is happening, by the way, in many overrun cities throughout the country where there's anarchy, where there's just people committing the most heinous crimes in the world. And they're being arrested and let go because no one's prosecuting them. So there's no deterrent. If there's no deterrent, then people are going to keep committing crimes. By the way, people think these politicians are stupid. They're not stupid. They're on the payroll. They're being paid by numerous nefarious people whose goal is to create chaos. They want to create anarchy and they want to create chaos. And they want to bring the federal government to go and step in like they're doing now. And they want to create a civil war. And they want to cause complete unrest in our country as an excuse to control people. But it's beyond the scope of what we're talking about right now. But don't think that anything that's unfolding is by coincidence or that these people are just stupid or they don't know what they're doing. And everyone says, why would they allow them to do this? Well, it's because they're being paid to do it. So anyhow, the Midrash basically says that without a policeman, the judge's word doesn't mean anything because there's no enforcer. שפורש מן הדין, אין ספיחה ביד הדין, לסייס לו כלום. אלא אם כן מוסרוי ביד שייטר. In other words, Again, he's just emphasizing the fact that without this need, without a police, without an enforcement agency, the word of the judge is meaningless because no one's going to listen. And there we see the matter of policemen that are only there to help and assist the judges. And if the judges are not able to give forth what it is that the ruling is, I'm sorry that since the judges themselves are not able to enforce the law, we have the necessity of policemen to carry that out. Ba'ali makal, with a stick, with a belt, with a means of physical deterrence. And therefore we see the name of the parsha is only called Judges. Because the policemen are not considered a component in and of themselves. In other words, they don't have a purpose other than to enforce the law of the judges. Therefore, what we're doing is we're emphasizing the name of judges, because that's what the most important thing is. The policemen are there just to carry forth and fulfill the law of the judges, but it's the law that the judges, are the ones who are handing down what needs to be done. אבל אין זה עניין הכריזי לעניין המשפט שיכול להתבצע בפועל גם ללא שייטרים, כשאין המצווה והזמן היא כסיימה שאין צריך לזה כנ"ל. And therefore, when the time is right, when we enter into redemption, and as the Rebbe said, we're already there, in the beginning stages at least, these policemen will no longer be necessary to enforce the law of the judges, because people will voluntarily realize that God's will is good for them. It's good for society. It's good for everyone. There'll be no need for them to want to go against, because that evil will be removed. וזה שהציבוי בתורה כלו גם שוטרים, הוא כיוון שישנה ציווי להדוירויס ומדבר אוי דזכו הזמנים וכל המצבים. במילא צריכם ציווי של שוטרים. Throughout the times, we've found the necessity to have policemen to enforce the law. Welcome. במילא צריך הציווי של שוטרים. ומצא שנדרש שיקבל אסדין בדרך כפייה. And therefore, the law needed to be enforced as was necessary based on to the extent of what laws were being broken, right? If you have I'll give an extreme example. You have a judge makes a ruling that, you're not allowed to murder someone, and someone goes out and is murdering people, right? So, obviously, you have to enforce that. You need police. You need people to make sure that what the judge is ruling is kept in check. Hey, and now we're going to say, okay, so we just discussed why in the future we will not need policemen anymore, and that why people will voluntarily on their own will, want to keep whatever it is the judge is telling them to do. And now we're going to tackle the addition that the prophet Yeshayahu adds, which is that in the future to come, we're also going to have advisors, not just judges, but advisors. So what is the addition of the word advisors for? Okay. So the general difference between a judge and advisor is that a judge is not someone who is on the same level as the litigants, as the one who are before him in court. Because he sits on a much higher level. I'm an attorney, and when you go to court, depending on which court you go to, the judge sits up on a higher place. Then you go to basic a county court or a civil court. The judge is maybe a handful of steps up. You go to appellate court and the judges are higher up. You go to the Supreme Court and the judge, it's like 10, 15, 20 feet above everyone else. And that's obviously for kavod, for honor, for respect and intimidation, whatever you want to fill in. But it's also to show that the judges are not on an equal plane of the people who are sitting there. The judges are on a higher level. They're elevated above the rest of the people. Hein mitzad yediaso havanaso hedinim hamishpatim. Even a bittel shetzarich liyois hanishpat. The Rebbe says that the reason they're higher on a higher level is, one, they have a much higher level of knowledge of the law and how to apply it than the congregants, than the litigants in front of them. And secondly, they are in a position that those that are below them need to be bittul. They have to be surrender, if you will. They have to realize that you go in front of a court, right? We use the court system here in America. If you go in front of a court, especially if it's a criminal case or something like that, the person in front of the judge, if they have somewhat of a cycle in their brain, realizes that their future, their fate is in this judge's hands, and that the judge is empowered to rule, that to put these people, you could put them in jail for their life. They could fine them huge sums of money. So it causes a sense of awe and the realization that this judge is not just physically higher than me, not just more knowledge than I am, but he has a power to enforce things over me. And therefore, it causes what we say a state of bittul, of self-nullification before the judge. And the judge is the one who issues a decree and states, this is the law, and I'm commanding it, and this is how it needs to be, and this is what is going to take place. And the one who is before the judge, the litigants, are obligated to listen to the judge, right? Or you get put in jail. This is not the case of an advisor. An advisor is someone who is more on an equal level to you. And his goal, his role, so to speak, is to give proper advice based on your situation, right? He's someone who's not there to say, you've done wrong, or here's what is right and here's what is wrong. But someone to say, listen, let me help guide you, if you will, in the right path for what is good for you. And his job is to give advice in a way that the one who he's giving it to receives it in a good way, not in a way of fear or trepidation of, oh, I don't want to go to jail, but wow, that's something that's good for me. Yeah, that makes sense. Sure, I would be interested in doing that. He is someone who's in an equal level to him, and he's like a friend, someone that you can trust. And he's giving him good advice on how to behave. In other words, it's not a decree like a judge. This is the rule, this is the law, and you need to follow it. It's an advice. It's a good advice of saying, okay, how can I help you, my friend? So here's what's going on, and here's why this is good for you. And we see as the difference between a judge and advisor, as is stated, is that is connected to the giving over of the law and the giving over of the advice in matters of Torah and mitzvot. And what one has, the other does not. Ma'alas hayotzi shehu makaber yoser etzel shema etzel v'zehadoy bo penimis matzias. The advantage of the advisor is he's giving you good advice, and you're going to take it to heart. Right? If someone who you feel is on your level, a friend, someone you trust, and they're giving you good advice, you're going to listen to them because you're not going to think, well, this person's out to get me. You're going to realize that this person is here to help me. And it's good advice. And the advantage of the judge is הרי זה מוסיף לשופט, שיש לו כוח התורה לפסח דינים. ניתן אז כוח הגדול שלא יהיה בערך, וגם שזה, גם בדרך הציבים מלמעלה, מכריח זה אדם שקיים מעש ההוראה. The advantage of the judges is that the judge, whatever he's telling you is the law, because he's speaking to you from a place not as an equal, but someone who's above you. So his word is very valuable in the sense of it gives you a direction, a North Star. It says this is what needs to be done, and you know that the judge is giving over the law is the way it needs to be done. In other words, it's not subject to interpretation. Here's what it is. Explained in a different way. So in a simple way of explaining it, the judge, we find that he emphasized connected more to the existence of him, of what the law is. And the advisor, we find, is emphasizing more on a focus on what is this advice that the person I'm advising is going to be willing to do or make sense to them. It's more focused on the litigant, if you will. Excuse me. And we see that both of these are necessary in our divine service. First, as our service is connected to our power of itself, which is an arousal from below, with an assistance of help from above. And according to this more specific, we see that both of these matters help from above themselves. It's up to them. The idea is that it gives the power that is connected to the person. So it can be enclosed in what we say in the way of panimi, in an inward way, right? Because people don't change until it penetrates, right? It's Egypt in many places is likened to, in the physical body, the neck. You say, well, that's a strange place to be called Egypt, because what is it? The neck, if you look, our head is, some people have bigger heads than others, but we have a head over here. And then some people's necks are skinnier than others. The neck is right over here. And then the body and the heart's over here. And the goal is that the head and the heart should work in conjunction, that they should be in a state of flow together. The energy, the emes, the truth should come in from the head, and the head should direct the heart in the right path. But a lot of times there's a disconnect, and that's where that's where the Egypt takes place. Because what he does is, you may understand something in your brain, but in Egypt, it cuts it off. It takes that energy and it swallows it up, so to speak, so it doesn't enter your heart. And if it doesn't enter your hearts, nothing's going to change, because, do things and are like, wait a minute, why did I just do that? I know better than that. That doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? Because it's not in your kishkas, as we say. So it has to travel from the head to the heart, to the gut, to your whole being, so that the advice you're getting this is what dat is, right? And Chokhmah, Bina, and dat. Chokhmah and Bina is the information, if you will, and dat is when it's connecting it into your heart. It's bringing it down into your emotions. And until it gets set into the emotions, it's not really part of you. And you'll continue to make the same mistake over and over and over again, even though you know in your brain, because it hasn't entered into the heart. And that's the importance we see of this information. What we say is labish, that is enclosed in an inner dimension. The Rebbe speaks about this a lot. So it becomes part of you, right? That's the idea. I lost my place. Okay. And this gives the power, if we will, to emphasize this information. Torah, that the judge, he is giving over matters of Torah, that is completely above from the comprehension of a person. It's a very high, lofty concepts, if you will. And the advisor's job is to to take that information and bring it here, panimi, into your kishkas, into your being, in such a way that it becomes good advice. How does it becomes good advice? Because you're listening, right? You ever ask someone for advice and they tell you, and you're like, yeah, okay, well, you don't do it. It's because it hasn't entered the heart. there's several letters I've seen from the Rebbe where the Rebbe writes, he said, I don't understand. People ask me for advice and I give them advice and they don't follow it. So why are you asking me? Because maybe it makes sense in the brain. Okay, that sounds good, but then they go about and do what they were doing before anyways. So why are you asking? So there's many reasons, but the point of the matter is it hasn't gone into what we say pinimis in a deep way, and that's the advantage of, or the completion, we should say, of the judge and the advisor. The judge gives it over from a high level, and the advisor helps spoon feed it, if you will, until it becomes part of you, where it's good. Vav. And now we're going to tackle the lashon of that you shall return your judges like in the beginning, in the aforetime, and your advisors like in the beginning. What is the difference in the aforetime and the beginning? The beginning, and it is Rishona the meikra mashma. Okay, so it says you should appoint your judges like in aforetimes. Aforetimes means like before, like from like the beginning, before it ever reaches the start of something, right? In other words, it's almost like in the potential stage, whereas in the beginning is indicative of the start, right? Like in aforetimes is like you're preparing, you're getting ready. It's like you're getting up to the start gate, right? Like you're getting everything in order, and then when I'm talking about like a race, and when it goes to green and you start, that's in the beginning. So now that's like the beginning, whereas the aforetimes is before that actual start. Why does it matter? Because the actuality of the judge, so to speak, is emphasizing the existence of the judge. And this is again connected to the consideration from the judge from above. So there's still a separation between the words of the judge, the law, if you will, of what is, let's just say, permissible or unpermissible for discussion's sake. But there's a separation between that becoming action. Like all day long, people are aware of what's right or wrong or what they should do or they shouldn't do, but they keep doing the wrong thing. How is that possible? I know, right? So what does that mean? It means there's still a separation, if you will, between what the information the judge is given over and how it has come to you in actuality and whether or not you're applying this information. Because after the psak, after the law is given over by the judge, it's necessary then only to begin this matter new. And to accept it and to do something with And therefore it says, like the judges in the beginning times, in the four times. And that the judges shall be returned like in the four times. The dargats rishayna, and a level like in four times, right? In the very first, if you will. Before it even becomes an actuality, because it's just, again, this information that's coming from a very high, lofty place. And it hasn't come into your world reality where you've done anything with it. And this is not the case of the activity of so it's not really pertinent to the class, but I'll answer you. Those are hooks for exercise bands. I do strength resistance bands, like for weight training, and so you hook them up to those little things with some clips. No, it's not some weird funky stuff, whatever you're thinking. Anyways, Masha Ain Kane. Policy. By the way, the second person who joined the class and asked that question, what are those things on your door? This is not the case of the advisor, right? Because the advisor, like, judges us four times, right, before that information actually came to reality. But the advisor is now connecting to the beginning of how it's affecting you and what you're doing with that information and how you're applying that information. And the focus is less on the judge who's giving the law and more on the individual who's carrying it out. And that he should be a vessel for what the judge is telling him to do. And the job of the advisor is to make sure that the person that's getting the advice is popping in their brain and making it applicable to their own lives, right? And therefore, the beginning is connected to the actual advisor. That he sees that it is good. That now the person that's getting the advice sees, oh, now I understand. Now I'm hopping. Now it makes sense. And now he's going to begin the process of carrying out what the judge is instructing him to do. And therefore it says, that the advisor should be in the beginning. What does it mean? The beginning of the action of carrying out what the judge is requesting. And what does it mean? They will return like in the days of Mashiach, like in the beginning. But Dargas Techila, then it will be the actual start. Him Kishrei means Techilas Kiyum HaEtzepafua, because then everyone's going to hop and ride. Once Mashiach comes, there's not going to be any questions. Right now, people can say, okay, yeah, the Torah says don't eat this, don't eat that. Doesn't make any sense to me. Why should I listen? Next thing you know, they wind up in a Chabad house, they're talking to the rabbi, they're sitting, they're learning some Chassidus, and things are starting to make sense. And oh, okay, yeah. Why would I want to pollute my godly soul? I don't want to separate myself from God. That makes sense. Now I'm going to start keeping kosher. So that's the difference, if you will. And that's why it says in the beginning times when Mashiach comes, the first thing that's going to happen is everyone's going to say, oh, wow, this whole Torah that God has given us in his kindness is not a punishment. It's not a restrictive measure to somehow deprive us of the pleasures of this world. On the contrary, this is good. I want to do this. And that's what it means, that the actual advice will begin, because we'll start listening to it. And further, we see of Yotzei Shalcha, why it says that it should be like you, like your advisor. This is why it means Shalcha, for you. Yiskabel etzel boifin penimia kabalas ha'etzois. And that's why it says to you that your advisors and your judge, because it will become personal, because you'll realize the importance of the entire world is no longer going to have such a significance. And what's going to matter is your connection to God and your connection to yourself. People spend an inordinate amount of time sitting on their phones and social media, following people and just spending hours. I just see these people just sitting and just scrolling and scrolling like this, and they're just sitting for hours. You're talking to them like, yeah, what's up? What's going on? Yeah, what's up? What's up? And they're checking and they're liking, and it's just controlling your brain, and you're wasting your energy for absolutely nothing. Because at the end of the day, there's a divine play going on, a movie. And each one of us is the central actor in our movie. We are the protagonist. We are the lead. All the people that are close to us, our friends or families, they're supporting actors and actresses. And all the people in the world who we don't really know, those are extras. So instead of spending your time following what all the extras are doing, who cares? We have to recalibrate and refocus and say, wait a minute, this isn't about all these people that mean nothing, that don't even know me. What about my life? Like, it's just distractions. And that's the idea, that when it becomes in a way of panimi, when we start to realize, wow, God has put me in the world for a reason. I have a purpose in this world. What is it? And how do I fulfill it? Because in the end, that's what really matters, right? Not how many followers you followed or how many people followed you, but what did you do? Not on your social media platform, in your life, in the world. When it becomes relevant to you. And now we see in this week's parsha, again, there's a different language where it says, judges and policemen you shall place in your gates. What are gates? Gates are the entry points to a city, right? They're how someone gets in and out of a place. Hakavana in Israel and Eretz Yisrael, they have tons of what we call moshavs. What's the other word I'm thinking about? Yeshuvs. There's many different kind of areas, communities that are small, like farm villages, small little areas. And the majority of them have security in the front, and there's big iron gates that close after a certain period of time unless you have access to it. And that's for security, because unfortunately, you're living under constant threat of people who want to kill you, who want to wipe you off the face of this earth. So you take that seriously. So you're blocking the entranceways to different areas of the city. And that's what your gates are in a literal sense. And the idea of appointing judges and all your gates mean your gates. So let's talk about that a little bit deeper, about this concept of your gates. Take and now we can connect this to our service of God. Your gates are referring not only to your gates of your cities and your towns, but to your personal gates. What are your personal gates? Shem sha'ar beticha b'nei ubin kol hasoviv oisei b'kol sherecha tzarich liyois shoitin tein lecha. They're referring to all of the openings that exist between your inner world and the world that's outside. What does it mean? That you're guarding shaitim nafshay, your soul. Hamachim nefesh elokis. She'atem hu lo yimar Torah. Shalei mar Torah haTorah shelo yin hagoy v'rida nabish ba'ivent titain l'chol hanotein be'ir ba'ayin yafeh hu notein. B'kol sherecha b'kol ivrei k'choisei apenimim. Ba'ifin shehu bo legamri. Sherecha ashar b'tchila shaloi. So we'll talk more about it a little bit. But This is a very important concept. And if people only realized the extent of the damage that can be caused to one's soul by what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what comes in. In other words, our physical body, if you will, is like a barrier that separates between our inward reality and our outward reality. The outward reality is how we're um, uh, negotiating or working with the outside world. But our inward reality is a whole different reality, right? There's plenty of people who function very well in the day-to-day outside world. But if you were to take a glimpse of what's going on inside their thoughts, in their brain, I mean, a lot of people should not be in the streets. They should be locked up in institutions because the inner reality and outer reality are disconnected, right? This is what we call your subconscious and your conscious. And usually there's a giant rift between these two things. And the goal of most therapies and healings is to heal, to make a bridge there so that your inner reality and your outer reality are in tune. So you have, these certain people that are walking on, they're just like spaced out, right? Like they're functioning, but they're not here. They're here, but they're not present, right? And you're talking about like what? Like they're just not there. Because what's going on is, whether we realize it or not, all the energy from the outside world is entering into us, and if we're not filtering it out. How does it enter into us? 7 gates in our head, the seat of our godly souls in our brain. That is where our connection to our inner reality of who we really are, and our unconscious, and what we call our authentic selves that exist in the upper realms. The connection between those upper realms and the lower realities is all in here. So if we're looking at things that are impure, if we're listening to lashon hara or impure things, if we're smelling impure things, if we're eating impure things or speaking impure words, that energy is entering inside of us. And when it enters inside of us, it has the ability to decay our inner realities and cause tremendous harm to our godly soul. So what we need to do is we have to protect it. We have to realize that our brain, that our supercomputer, our semiconductor, our processing unit here is extremely precious. And therefore we need to be on guard for negative thoughts, negative images, negative words, negative smells, anything that can enter into our reality and cause negativity. And that's what it means to appoint judges at your gates, to make sure that before you're listening to that, or you're seeing that, or you're eating that, or you're smelling it, you're pausing and saying, hold on, is this good for me or is this bad for me? Because if it's bad for you, don't let it in. Just like you wouldn't let an intruder break into your home, but yet we'll let negative thoughts come into our brain and we'll just sit and think about them all day long. And, like, why is that in your head? Get it out. Guard. Zion. בזה יובן הטעם לכך שלאח ביס המשיח לא צריך לשופטים, כיוון שאז יש שופטך ויוצאך ולשופטים. And as we said earlier, that in the days of Mashiach, we will no longer need police officers, because all we're going to need is the judges and the advisors. There'll be no more need for the policemen to monitor things. Hey, המשפטים וההוראות התורה הבאים על ידי שופטיך, ויחד עם הניתנת כוח נעלה לזה, והן עצי טבע והבוא על ידי יועציך. And therefore the judges and the advisors will work hand in hand. And the judges will give forth the information. And the advisors will explain what's going on. Again, I gave the mashal a little bit earlier about a shliach, a chabana. Here's the Torah. So from Hashem, basically, here's right, here's wrong. Do this, don't do this. There's consequences. The advisor steps in and helps each person to see where they're holding, what's going on in their life, how we can take this information and make it applicable to you in a way that's kind of fitting for you, if you will. And this is the good advice. And the whole point is that it should enter inside. So just like we want to block out bad things, we want to allow the good things to go in and to permeate our hearts to the point that it elicits a positive change in our behavior and our realities. And together, the judge and the advisor will bring Torah and mitzvot and godliness to each one of us in a complete way. And therefore, as we pointed out, we will no longer need a policeman to enforce anything. Only the judges, and that even though the judge is able to give over the law, as we said, in the commandment, it's lacking the service, what we say is panemius. In other words, someone may be out of fear, will obey or follow certain laws, but it won't be in their being. And as soon as that level of fear is removed, they're going to go back to their own ways. In other words, they haven't transformed. But if it's love, if it's a deep place that's touching someone's heart, that's causing them to want to do it on their own, that will always exist. That's what we call panemi. There won't be like, oh, the judge isn't looking, the teacher's not looking, let me go back to what I was doing before. That will be cease to exist because people will no longer want to do that. And that's the importance of the advisor, that it should go inner. It shall penetrate into his contemplation and his feeling through the judge, into the kishkes, as we say. And therefore, the Indian hafchi, but if you just have the advisor, you're lacking the actual depth, if you will, the meat, the importance of the advice. In other words, the advisor is going to take what the judge states and give that to that person in a way that's good for them. But without the judge stating it, the advisor doesn't have I can't think of the right word, the teachings, the whatever it is that they have to learn out. So again, you need both of them together. Again, we need both. We need the actual law from the judge and the advice from the advisor. Yes. Hold on, let me just do a time check so I don't get us too far behind. Let's see here. According to my calculations, we are now on, I think we're a little bit behind 209, 219. Oh yeah, I gotta pick up the pace a bit here. מהי הטיימה גוף צריך להיות יציח תחילה בכדי להיכנס לשומע עצה הבנה והצגה פנימית תרבה מצווה יהודס. Excuse me. And so the reason itself that it's necessary to have the advisors like in the beginning, in order that it should enter and hear this advice and comprehend and grasp it, that the Torah and mitzvahs and what they're about should enter into one's being. But even in the beginning, like you said, it should cause you to actually want to do it, to start. And furthermore, it's necessary to come to this service, every one of us, even before the redemption. The Rebbe is saying like this, it's not, we've already began the process of Geula. We've already began the process of Mashiach. We're not waiting around and saying, okay, when Mashiach comes, then I'll start seeing what maybe is good or, good for me and it'll make sense. And then I'll start doing it. No, the Rebbe said we must start now. How? Step by step, level by level. I can't emphasize this enough. The importance of every single thing we're doing now, of all the work we're doing now to prepare for redemption, to learn about Geula, to bring others to redemption of consciousness, to increase in Torah and mitzvot. Because when Mashiach comes, it's like we're building up right now. We're benefiting ourselves. We're putting on layers and layers of godly garments, if you will, that we're going to prepare, because we're so close to the full and final redemption, where the light of God is going to be so overwhelmingly powerful that those who are prepared for it will be able to enjoy it. It will be a pleasurable experience. Those who are not, it will be a stressful experience. They're not going to know what's going on. The energy is going to be so powerful. So right now, the Rebbe is saying, we've got to hop around. We've got to get moving. We shouldn't be waiting around. We need to start every day doing everything we can to prepare for, bring, and live in a state of Mashiach consciousness, because this is what is going to put us in the best possible position for when Mashiach comes. And how do we do that? Step by step, step by step. Exactly what I just said. That we must begin now, level by level, step by step, in order that we are prepared and we're ready for a proper vessel to receive the tremendous lights that are going to take place in the days of Mashiach. And just like we will return our judges like in a 4 times, and our advisors like in the beginning. The Rebbe is saying now's the time to start that process. In addition to this, not only that, the ultimate completion in the days of Mashiach are dependent on our deeds and our service now. As the old saying goes, you what does it say? You reap what you sow. We are building our own eternity right now in these final stages before Mashiach comes. Ki hagorim, excuse me, b'chshachar, ha-mitzvahs here, ha-mitzvahs ba'atzmoim, v'chel, ha-hamshach, is melamara ba'ifen, the midas ha-keneged midah, and everything descends above, measure for measure. The more you make God essential in your life, the more God will make you essential in his life. You get out what you put in. There's no shortcuts. Any successful businessman will tell you how difficult and how hard it is to work to become successful. But yet when it comes to God, people are just like, I don't feel anything. It's like going to an empty store and hanging out a sign, say open for business, and wonder why no one's coming to your store. You're not doing anything. I don't know what's going on. Because you haven't put forth the effort. But somehow when it comes to God, people think it's automatic, and it's not. Measure for measure, God repays us. The more we push ourselves to connect to God, the more we have what's called as Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, sacrificing our time, our energy for others, the more God pushes aside other interests for us. And therefore, the service of a Yid is necessary to draw down through this service. Exactly what we said. And therefore, now we're able to reach and receive this level of our judges as in a 4 times, and our advisors like in the beginning in the days of Mashiach now. And it's necessary for every Jew to begin this service now. And there's 2 general ways of observing the Torah and mitzvahs. One is in a way of, your judges, where you receive and fulfill the teachings of the Torah from Kabbalah soul without needing to understand or know anything. Just God says, I do. And another is through good advice. In other words, you take the time to understand, comprehend, figure out what it is that God is asking of you, find an advisor, find someone close to you that you trust who's going to help you on this journey, and then it makes sense and it's a good advice and you internalize it. The Indians and the Fa'ideh called Dorvador, Mitzvah, the Shaitim, the Yotzim Shal Doiram, Mavor, Psuchim, Shaitim, Titan the Hovakar Sharecha, Utsiva Ikar, Yisoit, Bakal Hamakoimois. And this matter is brought about through the Yidden in all generations, that we've always obeyed and listened to our judges and our advisors according to who they are in the generation, right? Every generation we have people who are on higher levels than us. Mashpiyim, guides, rebbes, rabbis that we follow, and we listen to them. And that's what it means. Judges and police officers you shall place in all of your gates. And this is a basic commandment in all places. Gam b'chutz la'aretz, even outside the land of Israel. But b'kol hizmanim in all times. Gam b'zman hazeh, including now. Again, the Rebbe is emphasizing the immediacy of now and not to wait. Kedisa b'parsha seinu, it says in our parsha, va'asa al ha'shayfet asher iyu b'yamim ha'heim, talking about these days now. Dreshes v'hagidi lecha es devar amishpat, that they will tell you and give you words of what is proper. V'sisa kol pi ha'devar asher yigidi lecha ad sheshayfet asher iyu b'yamim ha'heim kol dorhu v'kamshal b'dorah. And in every generation, the Rebbe says, we have a prophet, we have a leader. And just like Moshe's job was to be the judge and the advisor in his generation, basically telling people what it is that God is asking upon them and giving them proper advice on how to go about doing it. In every generation, we have a Moshe, we have a leader. There's many rabbis, leaders, advisors, but there's only one head, one Moshe Rabbeinu, one leader of the generation, and in every generation we have him. And the completion of this judge is that he is exceptionally wise, and he's giving us very good advice for us. We have no reason to doubt what he's telling us, because this is someone we want to listen to. It's just that the judge, the leader, the Moshe of our generation, he is the judge and the advisor. He is the judge because he knows halacha and he knows the Torah more than anyone else in the generation. And he's the advisor because God put him there to help you. It's just like Moshe got put there. Every generation we have a specific leader whose mission of the generation, and the generation is connected to the mission of the leader. And that is specifically what is incumbent upon us at that time and place. And by obeying this judge, this is how we come to know what we need to do. And he gives us the halacha according to the Torah. And he is also the advisor. That he tells us how to make these items, these teachings relevant to each one of us. That we can make it penetrate into us and do something about it. In order that we should receive this concept of returning your judges like is in a 4 times, and your advisors like in the beginning. In other words, we're aware of what we need to do, and we do it, right? The whole idea, like we said already, that the advisor in the beginning, meaning it's a beginning, it's starting, right? You ever heard this, Sora? I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, that's good. That makes a lot of sense. I'm not really ready for that right now. Maybe we'll see how I feel in a couple weeks. There's no beginning. That means the advice has not penetrated into you. If you have not taken this good advice and brought it into reality, then it hasn't entered your heart. It has not gone, we say, panimi. It's still in the state of a judge that it's, okay, that makes sense. I got it. Not ready. If something is in your heart and you feel it, then you're going to do it. If you're honest with yourself. Which is a whole other discussion because there's a lot of self-deception that goes on. That's Dugma the Hadna Yishna Mitchiloik Shebein Divrei Torah v'Divrei Nevuah. And now we can see the difference also in the difference between words of the Torah and words of the prophets. Torah is from above the world. The Torah is literally the will and wisdom of God. That is completely above any relevance to the world, if you will. connected to the world, but meaning it's at a much loftier level than the world. Kishem shlis makshava tifisa bikla, because no thought can grasp God at all, including His wisdom. And the main concept of Torah is that the psaktin, it's a halacha, it's a judicial ruling from above. It's a commandment. That's it. Masha'ain kein nevuah. That's not the case of prophecy. On the other hand, we see that God reveals Himself to prophets. This is one of the basic foundations of the Torah, that God communicates to us through His prophets. This is what the Rambam states in the foundations of the Torah. How do we know what God wants from us? That's why we have prophets. I'm not talking about the fake prophets on YouTube. I'm talking about real prophets according to Torah. Shinikalet b'daso v'seklut shahanavi. Bo'efen umitchad im hazeh. Midlabish v'seklim v'hadgashem v'dina ha'mara'a ha'nevuah v'gam v'makshavasam v'dyubarim. Kamash kasuv ruach Hashem davar bi. Manashad l'shayin. And that God's energy enters into the prophets. God speaks to His prophets. And then the prophet internalizes what God is saying. And the words of God come out of his tongue. And prophecy is specifically revealed through speech. Called Lashon Nevuah Adam Umachriz Umashmiya La'am. And this is what the prophets do. They communicate to the nation by speaking to them. Niv shoftim lo b'torah shichlo v'sha'ar b'machshava v'gam l'teichen ha'nevuah yesh shaychus la'odim ein ha'navi omer ela l'hodiano divreim hasidim l'hiyos ba'odim yesh l'mar l'chora she'torah nevuah hem klados al derachiluk ben shoftech v'yishtach. And the Rebbe said, and we could see that the judge is more connected to Torah, and the prophet is more connected to the advisor. That the judge is responsible for giving the din, the law of the Torah, the zabo in a commandment. This is the decree. Keep it. But the prophet, on the other hand, encloses God's word of the Torah, or the bottom of Hasaga, in a way that he comprehends and grasps it. And then through prophecy, he reveals it to the rest of us. And therefore he gives proper advice on what we need to do in the day-to-day reality of the world. Go out to war against this person, do this, don't do that. Specific advice. Because manim kimei haparshisenu ve'es al hashofet asher yihya b'yimei mehem kivan hu ken hu gam b'nogad hanavim v'tzuv achakach b'parsh navim makarabecha v'achicha kimoni kan lecha Hashem elokecha el hatishmo. And it says, and a prophet to be amongst you and your brothers, and you should listen to him because he's telling you the words of God. In other words, we don't listen to the prophet because of the prophet. We listen to the prophet because he's revealing the words of God. Sorry, I got a stiff neck this evening. As the Rambam explains, the Rambam says a foundation of knowledge of the Torah is to know that God communicates to us through prophets. And we are commanded, it's a mitzvah to listen to the prophets. And specifically whatever they're telling us to do, because it's the word of God. Right? I may be getting ahead of myself because we may be learning this inside, but whatever. Saying it out anyways. Moshe Rabbeinu said countless times in the Torah Why are these people arguing with me? When are they going to realize that it's not me? I'm giving them to them over what God is telling me to tell them. It's like you're attacking the messenger. Like Moshe's like, I don't get it. This has nothing to do with me. I'm telling you what God has instructed me to tell you. And since the Rambam Mishnah Torah is a book of halacha, it's not Hasidus, it's not Kabbalah, it's practical halacha on how to live our lives. And it's applicable to all generations. Zechariah, Malachi, Nistacha, Ruach HaKodesh Misra. Okay, and this is a very important part because there's a lot of confusion over this. There are several factions who may want to challenge the fact that the Rebbe is a prophet, despite the fact that he's given over thousands of prophecies and dozens and dozens of books of his prophecies. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but he predicted that the Gulf War, he predicted the fall of communist Russia. Numerous times that the Rebbe made clear predictions that came true. And the reason that people had a problem grappling with this is they said there's no more prophecy. How could you have a prophet when prophecy is gone? So the Rambam is misconstrued in many places. And this is one of them. The Rambam never says that prophecy is gone. What he said is the following: that after the latter prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, says Nistadach Ruach HaKodesh Misrael. Prophecy, Ruach HaKodesh, which is a lower form of prophecy, if you will, was nistalik. It went up. It wasn't gone forever. It temporarily was removed from this world, if you so to speak, and elevated up a little bit, hovering over above. And the Rebbe says very clearly, as a din halacha is that prophecy was not completely removed. It wasn't removed. It wasn't ended. There was not. It doesn't. The Rebbe is emphasizing this because there's so much mischaracterization of this Rambam, where people sit and say, "Oh no, prophecy's gone." That's not true. It was nostalgic. It wasn't gone. It was temporarily removed. The Rebbe said, what is the proof of this? Even after this, there's still several people with the ability to have Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is a form of prophecy. It's a lower form of prophecy, but it's some level of prophecy. And even more than this, the Rambam writes in Igros HaTeiman, that the time will come that prophecy will return to the Jewish people. Not only did he say it just temporarily left, he's even saying it's going to come back. The Ein Sefer Hazaras HaNevuah Hakadamas Mashiach. And there's no doubts, in other words, according to everyone, that before the redemption, before Mashiach, prophecy will return. It says Hakdama Mashiach, not when Mashiach comes, but preceding Mashiach. In other words, one of the signs that Mashiach is here, that is present, that is on the way, however you want to look at it, is that prophecy will return. And now, according to what we said above, that you will have your advisors like in the beginning, and that in order that we shall receive these high revelations in the days of Mashiach, it's necessary that this beginning, this starts now, this service now. What service? Of your advisors. In other words, the advising is coming back as a preface to the prophecy. And drawing down in such a way that we're able to receive it. And then it will be possible to receive the tremendous revelation of godliness in the days of Mashiach in an inward way. That is why prophecy returns before Mashiach comes, because the prophet, whose message of the prophecy of redemption, his job is to prepare us for Mashiach. So when Mashiach comes, we are prepared, and this energy will go inside of us and not cause terror and confusion. It will cause clarity and warming. It says that right when Mashiach comes, the God will remove the sun from its sheath, talking about he will take Havaya et Elokim, and it will heal the righteous and punish the wicked. Meaning those who are working now to prepare for this tremendous event will have a tremendous, warm, enjoyable feeling of knowing that God is now entering and dwelling here amongst us. But those who are going against God's will, it will cause a burning. It'll cause a tremendous suffering. So the Rebbe is preparing us now for what is about to take place. And therefore we see in all generations, even the time of the exile, that a foundation of the Torah, as the Rambam says, is to know that God communicates to us through prophets, to Tamid Shaykh Ha'inin Hagilui, and Nevuah and the Matzah. And this is something that always exists in all generations, the concept of revealing of prophecy here in the physical world. And just like Moshe was the leader of the generation and the prophet of the generation, we have leaders and prophets in every generation. Navi ikim nazeh mekarav oiseh kamocha. That God will appoint prophets from amongst you, meaning people, normal people of flesh and blood. A prophet isn't someone who walks around with like a giant like head that says prophecy on it. It's going to be people. Obviously not simple people like us, but elevated people like the Rebbe. And the Rambam explains at length the concept of prophecy and what it means to be a prophet and the qualifications to be a prophet. And if you never learned it in the Rambam, I highly suggest you do, because it'll clear up any confusion. Because a lot of people guess when they don't know what is real. And the Rambam is the clear indicator of halachas, of prophecy, of Mashiach, of all of these matters. As the Rambam explains at length, Moshe, as it's connected to the prophecy of Moshe, so if the Rambam is going at length to speak about the prophecy of Moshe and what it was qualified for, and the whole point of the Rambam is to teach us halacha that's applicable in every generation, why do we have to spend so much time knowing about Moshe's prophecy back from thousands of years ago? And if someone says because it's applicable to when Mashiach comes, so why do we need to know it now? The halachas of the Rambam are applicable now. So why is there so much emphasis on prophecy? And the reason is in every generation called if they had even before Moshe rises from the dead. Everyone must know, according to halakha, that God communicates to his people through prophets. Now, not just when Mashiach comes, not just when Moshe is going to be risen from the dead, and not from thousands of years ago. All of those things, but not exclusively. Now, and every generation God places prophets amongst you, as explains according to the teachings of the Rambam. Call Navi Shoimoid Achar Moshe Rabbeinu Ein Anu Ma'oimanim Bo Mipnei Ha'ois Levadoi. And after the prophecy of Moshe, that God will continue to send prophets. And we're not believing in the prophets just because they have some kind of signs and wonders. And Mipnei HaMitzvah Shitziva Moshe V'Torah. In other words, we don't believe in the prophets because we, wow, that was wow. And we see all the miracles that they do. Rather, because it is a commandment. It is a commandment of a continuation of prophecy in every generation from Moshe and the Torah. In our generation, it is the leader of the generation, the previous Rebbe, which was for his generation, and our Rebbe for our generation. The Rebbe clearly says that in every generation we have one main prophet, we have one leader, one Mashiach, one potential redeemer. And before the Rebbe it was the Frierdiker Rebbe, and now in our times it's the Rebbe, as the Rebbe is telling us now in this Sikha. But Yisrael, and specifically now, after prophecy has already returned to the Jewish people, that this is a preface to Mashiach's coming. We have to have prophecy now because Mashiach's about to reveal himself. And this is how we know that Mashiach's about to reveal himself, because we're told this by a prophet. And the prophecies regarding Mashiach, as we just said. The rabbis teach us that the first Redeemer, Moshe, is connected to the last Redeemer, Mashiach. And in every generation, there is only one person who is fitting for this job. There's only one leader of the generation, one head. You don't, just like you don't have a body with 5 heads, you only have one head. There's only one person in every generation that is on a higher level, infinitely higher than all the other big Tachamim and everyone else in the generation. And it's necessary to know, according to halacha, now, even before the redemption, excuse me. Whew. I get pumped up from the sikha. And that, excuse me, that prophecy is returning even before the redemption. And after the redemption, it will reach its completion. But it has already began even before the redemption. Zotamet is to say, and there's nothing unique to know that prophecy will be in a complete state after the redemption. But rather, the chiddush that the Rebbe is bringing out is that this concept of Mashiach, of prophecy returning before Mashiach, has already started. And the beginning process of, and you will return your judges as in aforetimes and your advisors like in the beginning. And the Rebbe said this has already started, this process. And therefore it's written in the Rambam, because the Rambam is a book of halacha, and this is practical halacha. Yud. And this is the unique thing about the most recent generations and our generation, the most recent generation that we find ourselves in. And according to the announcement of the previous Rebbe, the leader of our generation, the prophet of our generation, that we are literally holding in the final moments before the true and complete redemption. And like the Torah states, judges and policemen you shall place in all your gates. That's this week's parsha. And a continuation in all the generations. Including all the most recent generations. And the complete redemption still not here. Because there's still, the Rebbe says, even though everything is ready for the redemption, there's still, what the Rebbe says, a little bit of evil left. There's still some residue, what's left over. It's likened to, have you ever, as a kid, you ever chop off the tail of a lizard and the tail still keeps moving, right? It's obviously dead, right? The head is disconnected. That's been used as an example of what's going on right now. The head of the snake, God's already chopped off, gone. The source of the klipa, of the impurity, is gone, but the tail is still kicking around right now and giving the appearance that it's still in control, but it's not. But because there's a little bit of evil, there's still a little bit of life force left in this in impurities. And therefore, we still find that there's still a concealment, if you will. And therefore, we still are holding with the necessity to have policemen. That's why, after learning the Sikhs, when they say, okay, we don't need any more policemen, the Rebbe is saying no. There's still a little bit of evil remaining. And therefore, it's still necessary to have policemen in these final moments until all the evil is dispersed. Calls Doros. But after, throughout all our service and all our work, throughout all the generations, we can understand we're the closest we've ever been to the true and complete redemption. And especially in the most recent generation, when we have revealed the innermost dimensions of the Torah, the Hasidus. As the Arizal said, it's no longer not only forbidden, but it is allowed, and it's a mitzvah to reveal the inner dimension of the Torah. And after the Arizal came the spreading out of the wellsprings of the Torah, through our Rebbes and our leaders, the Rebbes of Chabad. Yom Chazor Navo Yisrael, and now Yadam Chazor Navo Yisrael. Prophecy has already returned to the Jewish people. Including the prophets of our generation. There's prophets amongst us, and our judges and our advisors. Our judges have already returned, like in the aforetime, and our advisors, like in the beginning. Now, in our generation, and who are they? The judges are our leaders, our nasis, our rebbes. Nasi means natsut, means elevated higher than anyone else. Just like the head is elevated above other parts of the body, the leader of the generation is higher than everyone else in the generation. And there's no one even comparably close to the leader of the generation. They're infinitely levels higher. And the job of our Rebbes, as we've seen throughout the 7 Rebbes of Chabad, has been to spread out teachings of the Torah to the nation, especially the Torah of Chassidus. They are our judges and our advisors, right? And they're not only advising us regarding spiritual matters, but physical matters, how to conduct our lives. And specifically through revealing the innermost part of the Torah of Chassidus Chabad, that have been clothed in our Chokmah Bina and Das, in our wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, in a way that we can grasp these lofty concepts. In such a way that even, the seichel, the intellect of the animal soul can comprehend how God is good for it. Come on. And they could understand, even our animalistic brain, that this is good. And every person is capable of receiving this tremendous wisdom. And through revealing the innermost dimension of Torah of Chabad into our seichel, this is your advisor, teaching you Chabad Hasidus. You're grasping, you're comprehending, you're tasting in a way of Tami Chaim, the tree of life. You're understanding why God is good and why you want to connect. If it wasn't for Hasidus, I don't think I'd be observant today, because I can't handle just the judge portion, right? Do it. Hasidus is teaching you, explaining in a deep reason why it's connecting you to God in the deepest ways. The Gilui Pinimis Torah Lesi Levo Vayde Hataim Betchila Akshav. And the Rebbe says right now that the Chabad Hasidus is a foretaste of the new Torah that will come out from God. Na'asim b'nei Yisrael kol ha'odim. Kli panimi v'gilui panimis haTorah shela'achar zayid Moshiach tzikin. And this beginning foretaste that we're learning now of Chabad Hasidus will reach its ultimate completion with Mashiach. And all this is emphasized even more in our generation. And the well springs of Chassidus have been spread out to the furthest corners of the world. In such a way that we can comprehend in our brain. It's gone out to the furthest channels. And and through the leader of our generation that has been spreading out Chassidus throughout the entire generation. And increasing, spreading out light into the most recent days. Near Fas Gam Braille, when Chassidus has been printed in Braille, the Tanya was printed in Braille. And what is the Rebbe? The Rebbe doesn't, God forbid, term the people who need Braille as blind. What does he say? That they have too much light. And because there's too much light, it can't filter through their eyes properly. And all of our work has been completed, as the leader of our generation has told us. Including the service of our Lebbes, our Nasis, our judges, and our advisors. Up till now. And we see now that we are already holding in the place of returning your judges as in the aforetimes, and your advisors in the beginning, because that's our Rebbes. They're our judges and our advisors. And this is an important teaching for everyone in our generation as we're approaching Shabbos Parsha Shoftim, but Prat Bazman Acharon, and specifically in these recent times. Haragim Acharoim, the Guts, in the final moments of the exile. Tzaricha Liyois Avoda Bata'am De Keneked Mida Tzav HaGeula. The importance and necessity of our work right now in bringing the redemption measure for measure. The first some, and we must advertise. Etzel Atzman, the Etzel call Elo Shalim Avshar Lahagir. We must advertise to all those near us and all those that are capable of being reached by us. That everyone must accept upon themselves. The good advice and teachings of our judge and our advisor. The eyes of the congregation are the rabbis. But Prat Nasi D'Reino, and more specifically, the leader of our generation. That he's a continuation of all the Rebbes and all previous generations before. Prat D'Reino, and most specifically, the judge and advisor of our generation. The Rebbe is referring to himself. As is commanded in the Torah. Bavakasha, Basimcha. Hold on, I lost my place. Okay, consider our Torah. No, Navi Akim Lahem Karab Achechem Kamocha. V'nistan Divrei B'fiv Divrei Elohim as Kol HaShayotzin Elav Tishma'un. And we must listen to the leader and of the generation, who's our prophet and our judge and our advisor, because the Rambam says, Psaktan Rambam, Am Yesh La'achar Hama'alas Tahashlemas Tzrichen Yis Hanavi Umara Oisyos Umofsim. And we see the tremendous advantage and the completion. It's necessary that the prophet, that even though he is showing us signs and wonders, we see accordingly the continuation that this is fulfilled at length by the leader of our generation, who has showed us numerous signs and wonders. That but we're not listening to him because he's shown us signs and wonders. We don't listen to the Rebbe because of the countless miracles and prophecies that he has given us. And we don't believe in him because of these miracles and wonders. But we listen to him because it's a commandment, commanded by Moshe Rabbeinu in the Torah. That we must listen to them. It's a commandment of the Torah that this is how God communicates to us through his prophets. And we will see how every word he speaks his truth. And even more than this, Navi Sha'id Lo, Navi Achar Shahu Navi. Not only that, the Rebbe says, once someone is established as a prophet, and they tell you that someone else is a prophet, you have to listen to them. The Rebbe's, for those who know, before the Rebbe became Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe openly said that his son-in-law is a prophet, and the Frierdiker Rebbe was already established as a prophet. And the Rebbe is again letting us know that we don't question the prophecy. This is not someone saying, "Oh, look at me, I'm a prophet." He's letting us know that every word he's telling us is a word of God. It's not his own wording. And we see this as it's connected to the leader of our generation. And through a continuation of the previous Rebbes. Just like the Frierdiker Rebbe was told that he was a prophet from the Rebbe Rashab. And the fact that an existing prophet tells you that someone else is a prophet, you have to take that to truth. It doesn't mean you start investigating to see whether it's true or not, because you already know that this person is a prophet because the prophet told you. And we're obligated to obey and listen to him, even before he shows the signs and miracles. And it's forbidden to say, well, maybe he's really not a prophet and maybe it's not really true. But asur, he's to say, and it's forbidden also to test him, too much to show. Come on, show us another. Come on, you're really a prophet. Do another miracle. We don't do that. Lo nistisno es Hashem adu kechem kernesa bamas. But we listen to him because he's a prophet, because God told us to listen to him. And we don't question him. And we don't ask questions because God told us this is how he's communicating to us. And therefore we believe in the words of the prophets. Not because of the words are coming from this prophet, but because the words of prophecy are coming from God directly through this prophet. Right? And according to the teachings we said above, we must publicize to all the people in our generation that God has chosen a person of flesh and blood, free choice. And this person is infinitely higher than the rest of the people in the generation. And that your judge and your advisor is the Nasi Hador. It's the leader of the generation. And he is giving you good advice. And this good advice is applicable to all the Jewish people and to the whole generation. And all the Torah and mitzvahs that he learns and teaches us about, this is good advice. Listen to what he's telling us. And this is connected also to the days of his life in general. And all of his ways and all of your deeds, you should listen to him. And the prophecy that was given forth by the Frierdiker Rebbe was immediate tshuva, is immediate geula. But now our Rebbe has already removed the tshuva part, and he says now the atra geula, it's time for the immediate redemption. And immediately Mashiach is coming right now. Just pause a second, because I'm out of breath. I get all pumped up. The Rebbe literally just spent this whole sikha letting us know that the leader and prophet of the generation was his father-in-law, and is him, and that he is the judge and the advisor of the generation. And he's telling us as a prophet of God, in other words, not as warm and fuzzy rose-colored lenses, to make us feel good. But he's telling us as a chosen prophet of God that God is communicating through the Rebbe and telling us we're mamish immediately right before the redemption, that the whole purpose of creation is about to be fulfilled 5,785 years ago, before God started the creation of the world. He said the whole goal of creation is redemption. And the Rebbe is telling us as the leader and prophet of our generation, it's happening right now. Don't put your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening. Don't ignore it. Take advantage of these moments, because you'll remember if you don't, and you'll be quite unhappy. On the other hand, if you do, you'll be very happy, because everything we're doing now is helping prepare us to live in a state of Mashiach awareness now. And every one of our generation should receive this and accept this good advice of our judge and our advisor, and to know that it's good advice you're being given. And for everyone this advice is existing. A multitude of teachings and a multitude of advice. In addition to all of this, your judges and your advisors, the eyes of the rabbis, including specifically the leader of our generation. And good advice you're being given. It's good advice for you, and good advice is for the masses. And through receiving and accepting this teaching and the advice of your judge and your advisor in our generation, and we see the beginning and that our prayers are already being answered, where we say every day in Shmona Esrei, and return your judges like 4 times and your advisors in the beginning, and and in the true and complete redemption, this will reach its completion. But now, the end of the deed is the beginning of the thought, that we are now at the end of the deed and the beginning of God's thought, which is for redemption. And the prophecy is that Moshiach is literally moments away. And a question may arise. People may ask, how can you say such? That the Rebbe is saying that. How could it be that Mashiach's coming now? By the way, the Sikha was given 34 years ago. And back then, now everyone's talking about Mashiach. The biggest antis are talking about Mashiach now. But at the time, people were saying, what is the Rebbe talking about? Mashiach. The Rebbe is saying, how could people asking such a question? Kitzad yechol zeh le'avor le'hatzliach b'tzorah le'halach halka kol kach. Kitzad yigeh b'nei habayit al zeh nivei yoymar ha'olam al kach v'am yehzeh shalei einin lego hayachid. The Rebbe said, what do you answer? That the Mashiach's coming is some unique thing? Why are you so surprised about this? But rather the whole concept of redemption is the whole purpose of God's creating the world. That God's desire to live in this dwelling place, down in this physical world. What is someone says this is the entire purpose of creation and it's happening. What are you so excited about? Of course it's happening. Why does that sound like such a crazy concept? This is the whole Torah. The whole foundation of everything is built on this. Base, pashtus. And the Rebbe says in actuality, as we find ourselves in a parengen, in the Dagan Amos of the leader of our generation, every one of us, men, women, and children, call the Rosh Kabbalah as Atzmo Haklatus Toivus. Each one of us should take upon ourselves good resolutions. Good resolutions to take good deeds upon ourselves, as we have spoke about in this Farengen. And increase in our Torah learning, written and oral Torah. And increase in learning the Torah of Chabad, of our leaders of our generation, every one of the Chabad Rebbes. And you shall place judges in all 7 of your gates, your 2 eyes, your 2 ears, your 2 nostrils, and your mouth. And that they should be guarded for only matters that are holy and connected to Torah. And again, the leader of the generation is the main judge and advisor of the generation. But Pratis Yoser more specifically, that this is a basic foundation, that in every generation we have a leader of the generation. And his job is to reveal godliness down here below in the physical world. And the judges that you place in all your gates, this judge and the advisors, including drawing down, specifically also referring to your godly soul, that your godly soul should be the judge and advisor of your body, that you shouldn't listen to your animalistic soul, but your godly soul. The call sha'arim and all your gates, and they're referring to the gimel mochim, so that your brain, watch what goes into your head. All day long, negative thoughts are trying to enter into our brain and try to take us down and tell you you're no good and it doesn't matter and you're an idiot and you did that yesterday, so you'll do it again today. You've got to block that garbage out of your brain. You got to build a fortress, right? Just like if you had a diamond, a huge diamond that was worth a few $1 million, you don't leave it out in the streets. You put it in safes. You lock it up. Your thoughts, your godly soul is diamonds. You got to close off your ears, your eyes, your nose, your mouth from any external information that is harmful to you. And this is the advisor and your judge of your brain, and your, first of all, in your mochin, in your brain, and also in your heart. And all your the measurements of your godly soul. We should focus on comprehending and learning Torah concepts. That's how we should purify our brain and our hearts. Specifically, as it's been given advice to us from the judge of our generation. And that our hearts should be filled with love and awe of God. And the whole point of learning is it should lead to actuality, to deed. In actuality, it should increase power of our eyes, our hearing, in our smell and our speech. All that should be transformed to godliness. And each one of them, the small. I said, turn away from evil and do good. This is referring to our eyes and our ears and our nose and our mouth. The Rebbe is talking about our gates again, that we should transform them to godly entities. To transform bitterness to sweetness. That the teachings of the judge, they should impact all aspects of our life. Hein aninim shehein metukim vehein aninim shehein ma'arim. Ava megiluim bezeh. שבאמס הפנימית, גם הדבר מה, מתוך, והדרבה, מתיקה מעלי זויסה. We should transform all the bitterness to sweetness, and it should penetrate in a deep, meaningful way. באופן שכל הפרטים בפרטים, and all the details of our life should be penetrated with the teachings of the judge and the advisor, who is not only the leader of our generation, but also our godly soul. That, in other words, our godly soul and our animal soul are a war over our bodies. And the Rebbe said that your judge and your advisor listen to your animal, your godly soul, not to your animal soul. And each one of us, our godly soul, is the judge and advisor for our life. That each one of us should accept upon ourselves the teachings of the leader of our generation, and not only to accept ourselves, but to influence others, including the entire world. That the world is a place of concealment. It should penetrate into the inner depths of the world. And they should know and advertise and let them know that there is a nasi, there's a leader, a prophet amongst us. And it should penetrate even to the foundation stone of the earth. In this physical world. And there should not be any changes. In other words, that this energy should go in a deep way into the innermost dimensions of everything. This should apply to specific matters and general matters. And the yud of God's name is referring to bittul. What does the bittul mean? To accept upon ourselves all the teachings of the leader of our generation, who is also our judge and our advisor, as we pointed out. And even more than this, we emphasize in this year, the year I will show you wonders. And it says in the world to come is through Bina, and the wonders are connected to Bina, that we will truly see and understand the godly energy in the world. And in this year specifically, we already are seeing miracles and wonders. And we find ourselves in the month of Elul. The month where we do a counting, a reckoning of the previous year and a preparation for the upcoming year. And we already have the summer months that have passed, and now we're preparing for the winter months that are coming up. In addition to this, we see we're in the middle of the 7 weeks of comforting, the 7 Torahs of comforting, and therefore we must demand we must demand of God until when that He must bring the redemption. And God will surely comfort us. And the ultimate comforting of the true and complete redemption. Yud Gimel. May be God's will. Through the service of appointing judges in all of our gates. In a way of the judges returning us in our 4 times. And should take place in actuality. Including the gates of the land of Israel. So Rachel the Beis Hamikdash and the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, Tava be'eretz hasha'ar. And our service will all be renewed, including the Beis Hamikdash. That will descend from heaven. And that we will all be able to enter into the Holy of Holies. And as we stand after the 15th of Menachem Av, with the Mazal of the Ariyah, Rosh Tevis Av, Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, Yeshua Hashanah Harab, Menhag Yisrael, and it's a custom that we should wish each other. That we should be signed and sealed for a book of life of a happy and sweet year. The Shana Torah Metuka, the Gashmis and Ruchnis in spiritual and physical matters. The Ruchnis and Gashmis, Gam Yechad, and both of them combined together. And Hashem, the Kodesh Baruch Hu Yimada, Sha'adas, and God will fulfill all the desires of our hearts for good. Specifically, including the demand that each one of us must demand of God, ad masai, until when? That you will, in a complete way, return our judges in the aforetimes and our advisors in the beginning, with the Gula Mitzis Hashlema Mashiach Tzikenu Techaf Me'ad Mamish, the true and complete redemption through our righteous Redeemer. It should happen right now. May God bless all of us, that we should have true redemption in every aspect of our lives. We should have our hostages redeemed. Our blood should be avenged, and we should have the true and complete redemption right now. God bless you. There will not be a shir next week. I will be out of town. I will see you in 2 weeks. God forbid if I don't see you in the base of Migdash long before. When Melech HaMashiach, whoever is listening to the shir, will look at every one of us and say, Yesh HaKoyach, thank you for doing what I commanded upon you, which is to learn about Mashiach and prepare for Mashiach. And in your merit, Mashiach will come. God bless you.